There are days when the body feels heavy, but it's not the body. It's as if something inside us is asking for silence, a dense silence, almost invisible, yet filling every space. Have you ever felt that? A kind of weakness that doesn't hurt like physical pain, but quietly drains you, as if the soul is tired of trying. Maybe you're at that point now, a point where it's no longer about fighting, but about understanding, about looking inward with courage and seeing that the weakness haunting you might be the very place where your strength begins to grow. What we call weakness is often an unintegrated energy, a point in your field that's still vibrating with fear, with rejection, with pain, waiting quietly to be seen with compassion. Napoleon Hill once said, "Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent benefit." And maybe your weakness is exactly that, a seed, still dormant, still in darkness, but alive, ready to sprout if nurtured with awareness, not as a flaw, but as a potential in transformation. Bruce Lipton, through the lens of epigenetics, reveals how unconscious beliefs can switch on or off our inner power. The biology of belief proves that weakness can be reprogrammed, that our body listens to everything we think and everything we feel. So weakness isn't a flaw, it's a frequency, a vibration maintained by old thoughts, inherited emotions, stories that may not even be yours. But this frequency can change because so many people carry this chronic sense of limitation, this silent impression that something is permanently wrong inside them, and under that a quiet longing, the deep desire to turn what hurts most into a genuine source of creative energy, not by force, but by presence, by truth, by choice. Maybe that's where you are right now. The moment when you stop running from what hurts, when you stop calling your weakness an enemy and begin to feel it as a calling, a deep invitation to meet a part of yourself still hidden, yet holding a strength more real than any performance. Because real strength never comes from force. It begins with truth, and your truth might be hidden exactly where you least want to look, but that's where the invisible shift begins, and that's where your new path is waiting. Some sensations repeat themselves like echoes from long ago. We don't know exactly where they come from, but they're there, always present when we most need strength, as if something inside pulls us back in crucial moments, as if part of us is still frozen in a time that's already passed. And maybe that's exactly what it is. Most of our so-called weaknesses are not real. They're frozen emotional reactions, old ice beneath the surface of the soul. They were formed in moments of confusion, abandonment, pain, moments where you needed to protect yourself, even if you didn't know how. Your body learned to vibrate with fear, not because you are weak, but because the memory of failure is still alive inside you. What should have become a memory turned into identity. What should have been left behind became a block. This is emotional survival, a psychic defense system that activates every time your soul gets close to something that once hurt it. It's your body trying to avoid that pain again, but in avoiding pain, it also blocks growth, because growth requires presence, and presence requires contact with what was once avoided. So this isn't about lacking strength, it's about excess protection, manifesting as insecurity, procrastination, or self-sabotage. None of that is weakness. It's emotional memory that hasn't yet found its healing. What if that's all it is? What if your weakness is just an outdated vibrational defense, a reflex still trying to keep you safe, long after the threat has passed? There is no error in you, only a call to recognize that what holds you back isn't in the present. It's in the frequency, it's in your body, it's in the emotional memory that hasn't yet been transformed, because every unacknowledged emotion remains active. And what remains active governs you until it is seen, heard, and gently told, "Now I understand." There's an invisible effort many carry in their chest, a constant attempt to appear strong even when everything inside is falling apart. Strength in this case becomes a disguise, a subtle survival mechanism pushing you forward, with your feet still stuck in the mud. On the outside, it looks like courage, but inside, it's just exhaustion. So many were taught this way, to suppress pain, silence doubt, resist at all costs, as if weakness were an enemy, as if there were honor in conquering oneself. But what this creates is tension, anxiety, a kind of deep tiredness that doesn't come from the body, but from the soul trying to maintain a facade that no longer fits. Napoleon Hill was clear. Real power isn't in brute force, but in the direction of the mind. And when that direction is contaminated by the denial of what we feel, strength becomes a mask, and the mask weighs. Trying to perform without healing the emotion is like running with the handbrake on. You exhaust yourself, you try harder, but you don't move forward, because something inside is still crying, and even in silence, a part of you that wants to be seen before you move on, that asks for pause before one more goal, and when that part is ignored, the body responds with symptoms. Life responds with stagnation, not as punishment, but as a sign that you can't keep forcing what needs to be integrated. True power is never born from denial. It's born from presence, from the ability to look at your own weakness and recognize it as a legitimate part of the path, not to dwell in it, but to stop fighting it, because everything you fight resists, and everything you embrace transforms. The weakness you try to hide may be exactly where your next expansion is waiting. Integration isn't giving up. It's maturing. It's ending the war within and stepping into peace, where your soul no longer has to prove anything to be worthy of love. We live in a time where strength has been misrepresented. Being strong has become synonymous with performance, productivity, and visible results, as if inner life could be measured by outer success, as if someone's worth depended on never falling, never failing, never breaking. But in chasing that image of strength, many lose what truly matters, the acceptance of their own emptiness. The world glorifies external strength. Rewards are given to those who endure, achieve, deliver. But few teach how to hold yourself when what hurts is invisible. Few speak of emotional repositioning, of the quiet act of sitting with your pain and saying, "I'm still here," and that's why so many fail. Because they search for strength where it doesn't live. They look to appearances for something that can only be built in depth. The movement isn't to be strong. The movement is to accept that there is a point of weakness that doesn't need to be hidden, but transformed. And that transformation begins when judgment ends, because what weakens is not the weakness itself. It's the shame of being afraid, the rejection of your own sensitivity, the effort to look whole when you feel broken. And each attempt to deny only deepens the divide between who you are and who you believe you should be. But when your gaze shifts, everything changes. When you look at your weakness without shame, without rush, without condemnation, it begins to reveal itself. What once felt heavy becomes a lesson. What seemed like stagnation becomes sacred stillness. The energy that was once drained by hiding is now redirected toward healing, because truth sets free. And weakness, when seen in truth, ceases to be an obstacle. It becomes a path, a passage into a strength that doesn't shout, but sustains. There comes a moment when the soul gets tired of running, when weakness stops being a shadow and becomes a mirror. It's in that moment that something begins to change, not on the outside, but within. When we stop asking, "How do I overcome this?" and begin to ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" That's where transmutation begins. Not through effort, but through listening, through presence, through acceptance. The first step in this inner shift is simple, but powerful. Give your pain a name, without shame, without explanation, without justification. Just name it. Insecurity, abandonment, procrastination, fear. The exact word doesn't matter. What matters is the gesture. Naming is like turning on a light in a dark room. It's the beginning of integration. When weakness is named, it begins to lose its threat. It becomes part of you, no longer an enemy. Then comes the second step, listen. Yes, listen to your weakness as if it were a forgotten part of your soul. Ask it, "What are you trying to teach me?" It may seem strange at first, but there is deep wisdom in every pain. Every emotion carries a message. Every limitation holds a lesson. And when you're willing to listen, what once felt like noise becomes guidance. You begin to realize your weakness never wanted to stop you. It wanted to protect you, to remind you of something you left behind. And then, almost like a whisper, the third step reveals itself. Turn that listening into intention. A clear, conscious intention. I choose to use this pain as a lever for awareness. That choice changes everything, because where there was once resistance, now lives purpose. And when purpose enters, energy follows. Napoleon Hill said, "Every emotion can be redirected, as long as it's channeled toward a clear purpose. That's what transforms weakness into strength, conscious redirection. It's not about erasing the pain, it's about making it serve your truth, turning it into a compass, a bridge, fertile soil, because every part of you asking for love also carries the path to expansion. And that path begins with the courage to feel what you once avoided, and to answer, with presence, with intention, and with love. Not everything that sustains is visible. There are forces that live below the surface, silent, steady, but utterly essential. A tree doesn't stand tall because of the beauty of its leaves, but because of the depth of its roots. And roots, by definition, remain unseen. They grow inward. They ground into the darkness. They feed on what is hidden. And that's why they are strong. That's why they survive storms. So it is with the soul. What holds you up in your hardest moments is not what others can see. It's what you've endured within. It's the pain you've faced, the weakness you've embraced, what once felt like it would break you and has quietly become the foundation that now sustains you. Emotional weakness, when understood, is like a buried root, quiet, invisible, but essential. And the deeper it goes, the stronger you are. The mistake is in ignoring the root, in believing that strength is only about appearance, achievement, or visible control. Those who live at the mercy of the winds are the ones disconnected from their foundation, from their own depths, because real growth doesn't happen outward, it happens inward, and every integrated weakness becomes fertile ground, becomes structure, becomes source. Wisdom is never built on the surface. It's built where no one sees, in moments of silence, in days of retreat, in the nights you almost gave up, but didn't, in the wounds you never shared, but that taught you something essential. Each of those experiences planted roots in you, and today, whether you realize it or not, they are what hold you steady. Don't reject those roots, honor them, because in them lies your real strength. There's a deep misunderstanding that has shaped generations, that showing vulnerability is the same as exposing weakness, that admitting fear, pain, or emptiness is a flaw. But this belief is one of the greatest blocks to true strength, because real power doesn't come from perfection. It comes from wholeness, and no one is whole while still hiding parts of themselves. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's emotional maturity. It's when you have the courage to stand in your truth, even if it's messy, even if it still hurts, even if it's still unfinished. Napoleon Hill spoke about the power of a burning desire, but real desire is born from full presence, from conscious awareness of where you are still hurting, of what's missing, of what aches. That's the place from which authentic desire is born, and it's only from authenticity that the universe responds. Because the universe doesn't respond to the image you project, it responds to the energy you truly carry. And the frequency of honest vulnerability has a magnetic power that no mask can match. It's as if, by allowing yourself to be truly seen, you're telling life, I'm ready. I no longer run from myself. And that gesture opens something. Because there is nothing more powerful than someone who has embraced their own fragility. Resisting vulnerability creates energetic distortion. You ask for something with your mind, but your energy says the opposite. You want strength, but you deny the pain that must be seen first. That blocks the flow, blocks the process. The key is in allowing yourself to feel, to be, to not know, because it's in that real, raw, human space that spiritual strength begins to emerge. Not as something forced, but as something revealed, the kind of strength that doesn't need to be proven, it just is. It belongs to the one who has already made peace with who they are, even in pieces. Because sometimes being whole simply means being present. There's a misleading idea that to manifest something, you must always be in a high vibration. Always think positive, always feel good, as if spiritual life were a stage where only light is allowed. But the truth is different and freeing. What creates reality is not perfection, it's coherence, the harmony between what you think, what you feel, and how you live. And that harmony is only possible through truth. Bruce Lipton, speaking through epigenetics and consciousness, shows that biology doesn't respond to forced positivity. It responds to coherence between emotion and thought. When you say, I'm fine, but inside you're drowning in panic, your body hears the panic, and so does the universe. Because the vibration you emit isn't what you say, it's what you silently sustain. That's why the turning point isn't vibrating higher, it's vibrating honestly, aligning with your internal reality, without masks, without escape, without judgment. Your weakness stops being a problem when you embrace it as part of your path, when you stop fighting it and instead include it in your field of intention. Because it's that inclusion that generates coherence. It's when you say with your whole being, "This is me just as I am, and still I choose to move forward." That vibration is powerful. It's not loud, but it's unwavering. It's not perfect, but it's real. And what is real manifests. The strongest frequency isn't the highest. It's the one most aligned, the one that doesn't lie to itself, that doesn't compare, that doesn't rush, that carries its own vulnerability with dignity. Because there's nothing more magnetic than someone at peace with who they are, even if still in progress, even if still healing. Because what transforms scattered energy into directed power is this congruence between what you feel, what you think, and what you choose to vibrate. And when that aligns, it doesn't matter what's missing. What matters is what's present. And what's present is seed. There is a moment when everything makes sense, but that sense doesn't come from logic. It comes from acceptance. True strength, the kind that doesn't waver, that doesn't depend on appearance, only grows when you stop running from what hurts. Napoleon Hill said, "Inside every adversity is the seed of an equal or greater benefit." But that seed doesn't grow in denial. It only blooms when you're willing to face it and stay. Neville Goddard taught that the first step in transforming your reality is to assume the desired state. But there's something deeper. The state you must first assume is vibrational authenticity, the state of truth, of presence, of no longer hiding your shadows, but integrating them as part of your journey. Because it is in this place, where you fully see yourself, flaws and all, that real power begins to emerge. Because spiritual strength is not the absence of weakness, it is full presence in front of what was once avoided. It's the quiet act of standing, even when your hands still tremble. It's the steady gaze of someone who's stopped fighting their own nature, who understands that they don't need to conquer to be worthy. They just need to be, to feel, to embrace. And then, little by little, what once felt like weakness begins to transform. Not because it disappears, but because it becomes the path. What scared you becomes fertile ground. What you rejected reveals your power. And you finally see. What seemed like weakness was just a door without a handle. Dark, closed, intimidating. Until the moment you realized the key was always within, and it was shaped by what you most feared to feel. That is where enduring strength is born. That is where a new life begins. Quiet, true, and deeply yours. And what if, in the end, your greatest strength isn't what you've conquered, but what you learned to love within yourself, even when everything seemed lost? What if what most needed healing was never a broken part, but a forgotten one? Every weakness you embrace reveals a power that had been sleeping. Every part of you that you meet with gentleness begins to vibrate in freedom, and that quiet, aligned, present vibration is what moves mountains within. Not because it pushes, but because it flows. The path of true strength is not a race, it's a remembering, a return to the place where you stopped listening to yourself. And now, maybe it's time to begin again, without rushing, without guilt, just with the awareness that everything in you is working for your evolution. Even the parts you once called flawed. You are not alone. You never were. There is a field that listens, a living intelligence that responds to your vibration, and it begins to move the moment you choose to be whole, even if not yet complete, because it's from incompleteness that the sacred emerges, and it's from truth that the purest strength is born, the kind that stays even when everything else falls away, the kind that rises when you finally say with peace, "I am exactly as I am, and that's enough," to begin.